So when I used to teach like pre-service and in-service educators, one of the things that we would frequently talk about is like the multi-perspectivalist nature of how you can't address any group of students the same way. There are many approaches that you need to use for each individual, many pedagogies, projects, ways of differentiating based on tools, etc. But that can be difficult to teach sometimes to other educators. I'm curious if you have any strategies or suggestions for how to help educators work with a variety of students and consider, while this tool might be very accessible for one student, it is completely inaccessible for another, and vice versa for other tools.
Yeah, that's a good question. Advice for other teachers. I think what I would say is to start with some mindsets before we get into the pedagogies. To me, the idea that you have to really believe and commit to including all kids. For many teachers, we have this internal dialogue about, this kid is successful, this kid's doing great, this kid's going to go someplace, and this kid is not. And we may not say it out loud. But it informs the way that we interact with kids. And so this mindset of all kids belong here and have a right to be here, and kind of questioning our assumptions about that when we're looking across a classroom and say, I don't know that this kid really belongs in my classroom. And unpacking that, I think, is the first step. Those mindsets are a place to start. The second piece of that, which is also a mindset, is assuming competence. Before we can do anything, we need to know that our kids are able and capable. And a lot of the mistakes that I see teachers make is that they want their students with disabilities to be successful. So they over support, they over scaffold, they over teach. And it doesn't give students the flexibility and the permission to fail and to create and to engage in computing in ways that other kids do, because we're trying so hard to protect them. And so this idea of assuming competence allows a teacher to say, all right, let's just see where this kid is. And let's use the kid inform me in terms of what he or she needs before I, do anything. And then kind of the next step is to think about UDL and assistive technology, and to think about who are the people around that can help. So as a computer science teacher or a general education teacher who's teaching computing, there are other people in the school building that can be really helpful. So bringing in the special education teachers, bringing in the assistive technology coaches is a step to not have to know everything, because there typically are, if you look, resources for teachers to go to. And then you take your time, you talk to the students, you talk to the students' families, and you work it out together. So the idea is you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have the curiosity and the commitment to help and to support a child.
Excellent answer. I hope people go back and listen to those different ideas that were given, like especially the first part you're talking about with unpacking the mindsets and the biases that we might have. I think it was both Dweck and Duckworth who mentioned there are studies that would have pre-assigned labels onto students as like, this kid is going to excel, or this kid is going to be a future leader, and then like vice versa. And they would just randomly assign those labels to people, and the teacher would find that confirmation bias of, oh yes, that person is going to fail in life, or oh yes, that person is going to succeed, regardless of if that was just an arbitrary random assignment and whatnot. So it's really interesting how those preconceived notions have a huge impact on how we help kids and what teachers think about them.
And we all have it, right? So the idea is to acknowledge that, we come into a classroom with our own backgrounds and our own biases and our own previous experiences that inform the way we interact with kids. And so we have to question those assumptions constantly. And I have to do the same thing, in terms of, I walk into a classroom, and because I do a lot of research studies in these areas, I know a lot about the kids that I'm about to interact with. And many times that's not always a good thing. And so making sure that I'm able to check myself and really see this child and let the child inform what happens is important.
Yeah, and especially with assuming competence in anything related to technology, there's often this assumption from a lot of educators where it's like, oh, well, kids are always on TikTok and playing video games, etc. So therefore, they understand computer science. It's like, well, there's a difference between using a device and, being able to program a device. Like, those are two different sets of skills and understandings. This excerpt of the CSK8 podcast is from episode number 133, which is titled Accessibility and Inclusion in CS Education with Maya Israel.